morning.
Absolutely.
Glad we're all alive.
No
there was
kidding.
a lot of breaking news over the weekend.
Really?
My word. So
Where
the
do you
President of the
start?
United States, Donald Trump, is saying that he was surveilled by President Obama's administration, and he is now calling for an independent investigation to get to the bottom of this.
And he'll get it. That'll be part of it. Then
Obama, probe on tap. Congress will investigate Trump's claims. That's on the cover of the New York Post. And then here's a good one on the cover of the New York Times. FBI chief pushes for the Justice Department to refute Trump. This article, which is based on leaks, says that James Comey has told people, look, we told the Department of Justice, you've got to tell people that the FBI did not do that because it insinuates that the FBI broke the law.
Well, that's
Keep in mind,
report.
It's their report, but it's based on a leak. It is based on unnamed sources.
So, if there is going to be, this is what the accusation was, and as Mark Levin laid out wonderfully yesterday on this show and on his show on Thursday, he looked through the Washington Post, the Guardian, the New York Times, and said this is clear that in July a FISA request was made to go ahead and tap the Trump Tower phones to go after one source in particular and their links to a bank. It was denied, which almost never happens. This according to the this was happened to the earlier reports. And they tried it again in October, and they got it granted. Donald Trump sees this on Friday or Saturday, and at 6 a.m. roughly, he begins to tweet about it. How outraged he would be that the Obama administration would be behind him as a candidate and as president-elect, trying to surveil him. However, the pushback is they have the National Intelligence Director saying we didn't do it, and a report saying that James Comey wants the Justice Department to come out and say the FBI didn't do it.
He's saying it didn't happen because it would be illegal, according to these reports in the New York Times. But we know that James Comey is not afraid to come out and talk. So Kellyanne Conway is saying, come on out, Mr. Comey. Tell us if this is true or not. Listen.
If Mr. Comey has something he'd like to say, I'm sure we're all willing to hear it. All I saw was a published news report. I didn't see a statement from him. And so I don't know what Mr. Comey knows. If he knows, of course, he can issue a statement. And we know he's not shy.
Okay, so Kellyanne Conway is going to be on with us at 7 o'clock this morning, and she makes a good point. I mean, keep in mind, the New York Times story, unnamed sources. It says that Comey wants to do it, but so far the Department of Justice nor the FBI have released any particular statements. Keep in mind, what this all comes down to is Donald Trump said, look, I just found out that I was wiretapped before the election.
I mean, it's not. Probably in retrospect, this was a tweet. He caused a lot of consternation in his world by doing it, and he wanted to push back. But he could push back the same way he's been pushed. He could say, "I wonder if there's anything to that." He could put his chief counsel on this story, and then leak out that the White House is concerned that maybe the previous White House was going after him.
See, I think that he thinks for sure that it happened. I mean, the initial source of all these stories in the other newspapers and with Mark Levin and Breitbart and everything else was Heat Street. And their reporter, Louise Mensch, apparently found out about this secret FISA warrant that was clearly approved. And now the White House counsel, Don McGahn, is trying to get his hands on that particular FISA warrant. Will he be able to do it? Don't know. Just know that James Clapper, who is very familiar with FISA warrants and how the FISA courts work, had a denial about them doing anything wrong. Listen to this.
If something like that happened, would this be something you would be aware of?
I would certainly hope so. I can say, obviously I can't speak officially anymore, but I will say that for the part of the national security apparatus that I oversaw as DNI, there was no such wiretap activity mounted against the president-elect at the time, or as a candidate, or against his campaign. I can't speak for other Title III authorized entities in the government or a state or local entity.
So basically, he doesn't know. I mean, the question Chuck Todd asks him, if something like this happened, would this be something you would be aware of? He says, I certainly hope so.
He also went on to say there's no evidence of any collusion between the Russian wiretaps, between the Russian hacking and the Trump organization. None. And then when Chuck Todd followed up, he said, when I left, there was no collusion. Right. I don't know what's happened since. Well, since we know that President Obama said, hey, NSA, you could share all your information with every single intelligence branch. And if you're wondering how a leak happens, that might be where a leak happens.
Well, here's the thing. When you listen to James Clapper testify on a show, talk on a TV show like Meet the Press, some people on Capitol Hill go, wait a minute, you can't trust him. Remember back in March 2013 when he just flat out lied to a sitting member of Congress?
So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly.
What does that even mean?
Well,
that was Senator.
lie.
Yeah, that was Democratic Senator Ron Wyden asking that question because he has trouble with the scope of what the NSA is doing.
Well, then we learned Edward Snowden revealed all that information, that was not the truth.
So now let's take a look at what the intelligence community wants you to know and doesn't want you to know. In fact, in terms of what the Obama administration did or didn't do in upending the Trump administration as he was president-elect and a nominee. Keep in mind, too, as you look at what the president does and hasn't done, we know for sure that the president was able to look at dialogue, at intercepts of Benjamin Netanyahu's conversation with U.S. congressmen and women as it relates to the Iranian deal and as it relates to President Obama. So if he was actually going back and forth on that, and also it's kind of interesting that Senator Coons says transcripts exist from the Trump Tower from the Trump Tower, he believes, and some type of Russian source. Then he later walked that back yesterday. Then in comes Josh Earnest, and he was asked about that. Now, let me back up a second. We have John Favreau saying this. And he was one of the chief architects of all the early speeches by Barack Obama. He said this: "I'd be careful about reporting that Obama said there was no wiretapping. Statement just said that neither he nor the White House ordered it." So that's interesting. Why was he parsing the words of the president's spokesperson?
Listen, as we just heard from Mr. Clapper, I don't know about. Nobody under my purview did it, but I don't know what the rest of the government was doing. Martha Raddatz, who really tried to take apart Sarah Huckabee earlier in the telecast yesterday, where she was really holding her feet to the fire. When Josh Earnest came on, they had an exchange that was extremely friendly and really didn't have many answers, but nonetheless, we thought we'd play this for entertainment purposes.
Seb Gorka, a deputy assistant to President Trump, is accusing President Obama of being behind recent leaks from the intelligence community. Can you say that no Obama staffers have been involved in leaks?
Martha, what I can tell you is that the men and women of our intelligence community are patriots, and these are professionals who have served presidents in both administrations. They don't deserve to be attacked or accused of having a political motive.
Thanks very much for joining us this morning, Josh.
Thanks for the
Right, shortened it a little bit.
He didn't even answer the question. He said they're patriots.
Right.
Not a yes or no.
Could they have leaked? All he had to say was Josh Earnest said, I cannot see it.
Well,
Instead, he says they're patriots.
And Martha Raddatz did not press him on the issue. And I believe, wasn't she the one that cried when President Trump was elected?
She was crying. She was tearing
that
up.
was the night.
She was tearing up. Look, why would Donald Trump feel this way? Keep in mind, from day one, it has appeared that his foes have been out to try to get him. They have leaked damaging information to the press, in some cases broken the law. Brian, when we were interviewing the president last week, the president feels that some of these protests that have turned angry against him have been organized by the former president. The New York Times said specifically that the staff purposely spread information throughout the administration to hurt Trump. And the political team, the Obama team, when you think about it, has a record of abusing power. Keep in mind, that IRS thing, was that an abuse of power? Hello.
I got a total pass. There was never any type of angry questioning about that from Martha Raddatz, George Stephanopoulos, or Chuck Todd. Right. But real quick, I'd just like to add this. He has evidently gotten extremely mad at Steve Bannon over the weekend, Reince Priebus over the weekend, President Trump over the weekend, as well as his chief counsel, Don McGahn. And I hope it's a wake-up call, because as we have a guest coming up a little bit later that is extremely close to him, who came out and said basically the team around him is letting the president down. He needs better people around him to have either get together and work with him more efficiently, because he is new at this, but he needs to have a staff. He needs to have a staff wake-up call.
Well, Kellyanne will be on the show. We can ask her about it.
I think he feels, according to a press report I read, that he feels besieged by all these leaks, because many of them are against the law, and they're all set.
Well, and
he
you know what it's
needs to
doing?
cut
You know what
his,
it's doing? It's making
legitimacy.
America think, can we even trust these individuals that are running our intelligence community?
So anyway, another slow news day, as you can see, and we kick things off here on this Monday morning. In the meantime, Heather joins us right now. We've got some scary news out of North Korea.
Yeah, let's talk about some of that other news. In case you missed this Fox News alert: North Korea intensifying its show of force overnight, firing several missiles provocatively close to Japan. The U.S. strongly condemning the launches, calling it a violation of UN Security Council resolutions. The chilling intimidation tactic from the communist country coming just days after joint U.S.-South Korea military drills kicked off.